Welcome back. President Hu Jintao kicks off his U.S. visit with a tour of Microsoft in Seattle and a private dinner at the home of the world's richest man.
And while at the home of the U.S. president in Washington, D.C., there are also two big embarrassments for both Hu and George W. Bush.
Back home, President Hu deals with an embarrassment for China late in the year: corruption. In April, President Hu Jintao becomes the first Chinese president to visit Microsoft's suburban Redmond, Washington campus. A group of local school kids was also on hand to greet the president in Putonghua. Then the president was asked to try his hand at using a tablet PC. Hu wrote, "Long live the Chinese-American friendship."
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Earlier, both well-wishers and protesters greeted President Hu upon his arrival in Seattle. Before arriving in Washington, D.C., Hu called for joint efforts to address the trade imbalance between China and the United States and made no apologies.
美国从中国进口的商品中，90%以上，美国已不再生产。如果不从中国进口，也要从其他国家进口。今后，中国将进一步扩大对美国产品和服务的市场准入，同时希望美方在放宽对华出口限制，减少贸易保护主义。
On U.S. demands for revaluation of the renminbi, Hu Jintao promised efforts to improve the exchange rate setting mechanism and China's financial system.
中国将继续坚定不移地推进金融改革，完善人民币汇率形成机制，发展外汇市场，增加人民币汇率的弹性，提高金融机构自主定价和风险管理的能力，保持人民币汇率在合理均衡水平上的基本稳定。
In the U.S. Capitol, Hu's reception at the White House is marred by two incidents.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the Republic of China, followed by the national anthem of the United States of America.
A U.S. announcement refers to China by the formal name of Taiwan.
中美加强交流合作。
Later, there's a Falun Gong heckler.
友好感情。
The 47-year-old protester is subsequently led away by the police and charged with disorderly conduct and disrupting a foreign official. Bush apologizes to Hu for the incident. Meanwhile, in Taiwan, President Chen Shui-bian relinquishes day-to-day running of the government. Chen announces he would hand over all duties except those that fall under the Constitution to Premier Su Zhangchang. The ruling DPP is rocked by a series of scandals, including allegations of insider trading involving the president's son-in-law. Chao Qianming is said to be implicated in 4 different cases involving accepting advantages. He was convicted on December 27th and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Thousands of people rally in Taipei on June 3rd, calling on Chen to resign. The protest is organized by the opposition People First Party, but Kuomintang chairman Ma Ying-jeou also turns up to lend his support. The two leaders of Taiwan's main opposition parties, Ma Ying-jeou and James Soong, join hands outside the presidential palace in Taipei. "A bien step down," they chant. "A bien step down," they chanted, using Chen Shui-bian's nickname. Ma said if people think Chen isn't fit to rule, they have the right to take his power back. He said the president doesn't need to commit a criminal act in order to be recalled. Ma added that people have been unhappy with Chen's rule for 6 years, and the recent scandal was just the last straw. James Soong also said Chen is incompetent and should step down immediately. Soong threatens the president will be impeached if he refuses to go. The protesters also called for a thorough investigation into the multiple corruption scandals involving the first family. During the rally, some of the president's supporters drove up to the site and confronted opposition protesters. Police had to step in and separate the two sides. The protests continue against Chen, his family, and senior aides for 4 straight weekends. Finally, on June 27th, Chen survives a parliamentary attempt to oust him from office. A recall motion launched by the opposition fails to pass. Following the unprecedented vote, Chen issues another apology for the scandals and calls on the opposition to stop the political confrontation. It doesn't. On September 9th, a massive show of force against Chen. 300,000 people joined a mass demonstration in Taipei demanding the embattled leader step down over the series of corruption scandals. The man who organized the rally, former Democratic Progressive Party chairman Xi Mingda, vows not to give up until Chen is ousted. But a defiant Chen makes clear he intends to serve out the remaining 2 years of his term. Massive anti-Chen protests continue day after day despite bad weather. Protesters maintain a vigil outside the ornate presidential office building. On the 7th day, the largest show of force yet in Taiwan to force Chen out of office. Rally organizers say more than 1 million people take part in a march around Taipei demanding Chen's resignation. They besieged Taipei later that evening by making a 5.5-kilometer trek surrounding the presidential palace. The next day, tens of thousands of pro-Chen protesters braved driving rain from a passing typhoon in support of Chen. The crowd chants slogans and wave flags, turning the presidential square in the heart of the city into a sea of green, the color of the DPP, replacing the red of the anti-Chen camp. Go on, Chen Shui-bian, go on, Taiwan, the president's supporters shout. More scuffles on double 10th day. Protesters take part in the so-called Besiege the City protest in Taipei to demand the embattled president step down for a series of corruption scandals. Meanwhile, a second attempt by Taiwan's opposition to force a referendum on the future of the embattled president fails, with members of his ruling party boycotting the motion. On November 3rd, a political bombshell hits Taiwan. Prosecutors announce they will file corruption charges against Wu Shu-chen, the wife of the president. The case involves the misuse of 14.8 million Taiwan dollars, equivalent to nearly 450,000 US dollars, State Affairs Fund. She makes her first court appearance on December 15th and collapses. Prosecutors say they also have evidence to indict President Chen on charges of embezzlement, though he is currently immune from prosecution because of his position. Chen promises to resign if his wife is found guilty, but the opposition pushes a third recall motion against him. On November 24th, Chen gets a fresh reprieve when the opposition parties in parliament fail for a third time to pass a bill that would allow the electorate to vote on his removal from office. The DPP in general also gets a reprieve of sorts when its mayoral candidate Chen Chu wins the race in Kaohsiung on December 9th. But Kuomintang candidate Hao Long-bin becomes mayor of Taipei. Meanwhile, one losing mayoral candidate in Taipei, James Soong, announces he is leaving politics. Corruption claims a powerful Communist Party boss in Shanghai. Shanghai Party Secretary Chen Liangyu is dismissed for his alleged role in a corruption case involving pension funds. The investigation is ongoing, but his removal escalates President Hu Jintao's effort to consolidate power and restrain economic growth. On the other hand, President Hu wants to accelerate growth in economic ties and trade between India and China. It's with that intention that he becomes the first Chinese president to visit India in 10 years in mid-November. Both he and the Indian Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, vowed to double trade between the two countries by 2010. But there was no breakthrough on the border dispute between the two Asian giants. Another border dispute between two other Asian giants also remains unresolved after Shinzo Abe, on October 8th, becomes the first Japanese prime minister to visit China before any other country since the end of World War II.
That concludes World Review 2006. We hope you enjoyed it.
And we wish you a happy and prosperous 2007. Good night.
Good night.